How you doing, Elliot?
Hi, Neil. Good
Can
to
you hear
see
me?
you.
Can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah. Sorry, I was on another tab.
That's all right. No problem. Excuse the noise in the background. I'll mute my microphone when we start. We've got the builders in knocking down walls. So yeah,
I
funny.
know exactly the feeling. I've got exactly the same. That's why I'm in the office today, actually.
Right. Yeah. I wish I had that luxury. But yeah, there we go. How's things?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. I was on the call with Victoria earlier on today, and
Yeah.
Andrea just talking through the SEO and the combined social and content stuff that we'll be doing. So that went quite well.
Excellent. Good.
So you've had another busy day, I guess.
It's been bonkers. I had last week off, as you know, so coming back into it, we've had a new starter arrive today as well. So
Right.
yeah, it's just spinning the plates, isn't it? And
Yeah, it really is.
There definitely isn't enough time in the day. But
How was your week off? Did you do anything nice?
It was okay. It was sorting out stuff ready for the builders to come on board. So
Right.
sofas put in the garage and taking light fittings down and all that sort of stuff, and ordering new lights and dining room tables.
So
it was an expensive week off, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Hi, Emily.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Sorry, I'm on my phone. I can't see who else is in here at the moment.
So it's Neil and I at the moment.
Oh, good. Yeah, so I'm trying the phone this week because I've just been having so many problems with my computer lately. It's actually doing a restart at the moment, but I think it's on its way out, in all honesty.
You're looking very comfy there, Emily.
I know. I won't lie. I'm having to sit on a bed at the moment.
Oh, dear.
How is everybody?
Yeah, we're good. We were just talking about how it is bizarre how busy you can be, even when you sort of think, oh, working from home, it would be really nice, a year of working from home, but it's actually probably been the busiest year ever.
No,
it's nuts.
I completely agree. Completely.
Yeah, it's you end up doing more, I think, because for one, we start at 7:30 most mornings, and tonight I won't finish much before 8 o'clock. So it's only so many days in the week can do that.
I know Daisy is coming in because she sent me the link, so she will be here at some point.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give her a few more minutes then, but maybe just as a warm up. So this week we're going to talk about Google AdWords. So the paid version of search marketing. So just out of interest, I'm not sure, Emily, do you guys run AdWords?
I don't have a huge involvement in it, so I don't know, in all honesty.
Yeah. I don't think you do at Client Farmer, Neil, but have you experienced AdWords anywhere else?
I haven't. No, the industries I've tended to be in have not really had the necessity for it. So this is going to be all completely brand new to me.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at to see about crops, because I was on the website. I've got that right, haven't I? No, I haven't. No, I'm talking nonsense. Ignore me.
You're talking about Noops?
Noob, that's it. That's
Canoop.
Yeah.
It's okay, don't worry. We hear all sorts of interpretations.
I bet you. Because I was on the website the other day and I thought they look quite cool. Some of those the coffee presses.
I've spoken to my boss Tori, and I think we're going to sort out a little something for the people that are on this call. It's really good. I don't know if you've been in some of the cafes and tried. I only had my first milkshake last week, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was so good.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, I was on there having a look, and I was very, very impressed with it.
Yeah, I got one of the I think it was like the 43%. Is it Venezuelan one, like hot chocolate? Got that. Was amazing. It's so good. It's absolutely delicious.
That's it.
Really, really nice.
I was on a shoot with them on Thursday. We're doing some TikTok modeling, so a lot of their marketing now will have my hands in, but we got through so much hot chocolate. I'm still not put off by it, but I must have drunk about 8 cups of hot chocolate. I felt so sick, but it was Nope.
Okay, I think maybe, you know what, we'll make a start.
Yeah.
And everyone can join. If people can join, then great, but otherwise, so unlike today, I'll intro with some basics about this stuff, and then we'll drop in for a chat, and then we'll go into a bit more detail, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so unbelievably, this is week 5, and we'll be talking about, so Google AdWords, PPC, sometimes it's called AdWords, but the PPC bit stands for pay-per-click. So just to absolutely clarify, so this form of advertising, you only ever pay when someone actually clicks. There's no form of serving impressions and pay by impressions. So pay-per-click, and then AdWords is the brand name for Google's form of this search marketing, which obviously works on the Google search engine. And this form of advertising, you know, I'll say now, it converts. The click-through rates are higher than social media. The conversion rates typically are higher than social media. If we can stretch our minds back to, it doesn't mean they're better, because the cost per click is also higher. So if you can remember back in week 1 when we were talking about the funnel strategy, because search marketing, typically the sorts of keywords that you'll be targeting will imply intent, you know, so buy hot chocolate, you know, there's strong intent there, and because it's motivated by the user, it implies they're a bit further down the funnel. So typically it's a channel that converts well, you know, and it's quite quick, and particularly once you've been working with it for a while, it's quite quick and easy to get up and running. It's worth noting that everyone thinks about Google, but the other player, and there are other search engines, Yahoo included, but Bing has a significant, or potentially significant, minority of the market, certainly in the UK and other you know, European countries and North America, because Bing is owned by, is the search engine that's owned by Microsoft. So when Microsoft ships Microsoft Office with PCs, the browser, the default browser is Internet Explorer, which is also a Microsoft platform, and the default search engine, or you know, the search engine that it's shipped with, you know, is Bing. So for that reason, it tends to be yeah, let's say that a slightly more mature audience, you know, like my mum, for example, will use the Bing search engine because she won't really want to change it, and it comes with her computer, so she won't change it. And you'll find it's depending on the industry, it can be up to 20% of the market, or even higher, will be on the Bing search engine. So it's very common for Mintrust, when we're running search marketing for clients, to run a Bing campaign in parallel with Google campaigns. And then in some, again, it depends on the marketplace, and we'll talk about how these platforms charge at the back end of today. But depending on the industry, you might even get lower cost per clicks and lower cost per conversions as well. So
is there a significant, sorry, Elliot, is there a significant price difference between Google and Bing?
I wouldn't say significant, but it's something that when you're setting up a search, when you're setting up search advertising, you could go into the platforms and you can estimate what the cost per clicks would be on the 2 different platforms. So it's kind of case by case, because as we'll see at the end today, I'll explain about, so Google is a marketplace. So the price is actually driven by supply and demand. So Google are not setting the price and Bing are not setting the price. So it's about the users. If that makes sense. So it's quite industry specific.
Right. Okay.
But you know, so the short answer to the question is there's not always a significant price difference, but on some occasions there's a significant like benefit, a significant benefit in running Bing alongside Google, because the conversion rate sometimes can be, the cost per conversion can be much, much lower. Now, typically you would still need to run on Google anyway, because whatever industry you've got, the majority of your market is going to be on that channel. But it's a question of, if we can spend a little bit of money to hoover up the Bing market, and if our competitors aren't going on there, which is in some cases true, then yeah, the answer to your question is yes, it can be lower cost, or better value is probably a better way of describing it.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. And so the way that these things get worked, the way that they sort of get structured in terms of how you set them up, first of all, you just need a Google Ads account. And typically that's, one company would have one account. And then it's, a number of campaigns, and the campaigns might be a particular audience group or a particular part of your business, but it's going to be a subset of the key phrases and keywords that you're going after. You'd split them by campaigns, and then underneath campaigns you have things called ad groups. So the ad groups are where you do the top level targeting. So in this case, it's going to be largely to do with obviously the phrases that we're going for, but also things like device type, time of day, operating system. There are some other targeting options that you have even with AdWords. And then each ad group are going to have a number of different ads. So you might have, for example, for a typical campaign, the interest might run for a client, you might have 5 to 10 campaigns. Each campaign has 3 to 5 ad groups, and each ad group would have up to 5 sets of keywords. And then so you've got quite a large number of ads sitting under ultimately an account. And the reason why you sort of split it up like this is because, as we'll see sort of going forwards, the way that well, obviously you set everything up to capture the users that are entering these phrases, but the way that you get value, from your agency or from your team that are running it, or from whoever it is that's running it, is by you optimize this stuff so that you get the most number of clicks and conversions for the lowest cost. And as we'll see, that the way that works is you need that visibility down to quite a granular level, so that you can see what's working and what's not working, but also what tactics are working and what tactics are not working. We'll step into those details as we go through. So the workflow then for a given campaign is, we setting your objective, your KPI. So, and typically that will be, what do we want the user to do on the page that we're sending them to? So we spoke about landing pages in week 2. So an individual campaign is going to be targeting a specific landing page, and potentially even each ad group might potentially be targeting different landing pages. And then there's budgets go down to campaign level and sometimes to ad group level, depending on how we're targeting. And the audiences would be slightly different, and obviously the keywords would be, and then the actual copy that we write for each individual ad would obviously be optimized for the target audience and for what we want them to do. And then the thing that's quite important with, or very important with any advertising, is to set up the campaign tracking. So we can take, using cookies, we can set up the landing page so that the landing page connects with the ad, the lowest, meaning the most granular level, the ad. And then we can see not only what people did on the search engine platform, so how many times was the ad showed, how many times did people click through it, and to a certain extent you can even get some demographics on who did what. But then if we can tie that to what they actually did on the landing page and actually that website session, that visit, then that's great. And the cookie also allows us to see if someone came back 2 days later or 2 weeks later and did something else. And that's how, so when we set up campaign tracking, and as we said, we'll talk about Google Analytics in a couple of weeks. We've got goals set up on our website, and so we can track down a completed goal to a particular ad, and that would be called a direct conversion if they complete that goal on the first session. That's a direct conversion. If they come back some days later or some weeks later and the analytics code is able to pick it up, which in some cases it will be able to, then you can track what's called assisted conversions, which means they had some touch point with that particular user that then went on to complete a goal at some stage. So that's how the tracking works and reporting. And then obviously you're looking at the individual ads and the ad groups and the campaigns, and you're looking at what's working and what's not working. And just very broadly, if something's working really well and there's enough traffic, meaning there's enough people running those searches for us to up the budgets, then you'd want to up the budget for what's working. You either reduce and or reallocate and or change the tactics for those campaigns and ad groups that are not working so well. So I sort of asked the question, I think, of Emily and Neil, but Sandra, have you run AdWords, and if you have, what's your experience been?
Yeah, this was basically in a different lifetime that I ran it myself. And I think, like, most recently, we've been working with your team. But I really think, you know, kind of drilling down into what you want to achieve and then kind of setting it up in a way that makes sense and splitting it up in a way that makes sense in terms of the ad groups that you use, and really just tracking everything and setting everything up. It takes some time to kind of get everything up and running in a way that's kind of optimized for what you want to achieve. But then I think once it's up, you can see the results really quickly. So I think that's quite interesting that, you know, there's a bit of time that you need to ramp it up, but then the results do come in quite quickly once you're live. Yeah, I think it's always really interesting to see which AdWords kind of perform and which like perform worse than you would have thought. There's a lot of interesting findings there. Yeah,
no, it is, and you're right. It is a channel that typically you can get results relatively quickly, because if people are making those searches in decent numbers, then it implies that there's a demand there, and if we can meet that demand, then the results are relatively quick. Anything you want to ask or add, Neil or Emily?
No, not for me. Not at this. Not at the moment, Elliot. I was just making sure I hadn't muted myself because of this building works going on in the background. So no, nothing at the minute.
All right, I'll push on. There's just 4 of us, so do interrupt. Do interrupt as we sort of go through. I'm not sharing anymore. Do shout out.
Okay.
Okay. So writing an ad. So this is what an ad looks like. So, you know, whatever it is you type into a search, typically the first 3 results they'll have that little symbol there, so you know it's an ad. So you've got a clickable title. So clickable meaning this is a hyperlink, and when we click on that particular click on that particular title, we're going to go to a landing page. Now, the interesting thing about this is a URL, and the inference is what this looks like is we're going to click on to this particular landing page, but actually the URL is something we can set when we actually write the ad. So we can make this URL look like whatever we want it to look like, and a nice clean URL that explains what it is the user's clicking through to is obviously what we want to do. In reality, the URL is going to have a whole bunch of tracking code that sits along the back end of the URL. So, and that's part of how we do that tracking, that ad level and user level tracking that's very powerful once you've got it set up. Okay, and then obviously there's the main body of text here, which will be the ad itself. Let me put these. So these are the things. Oh, pardon. These are the main things that we have under our control when we're setting up an ad. So it's headline 1 is the main headline, and then you can tag on headline 2. This is called the display URL. So as I just mentioned, it doesn't have to be the exact URL. It's what gets displayed. Description. There's stuff called site links. These are what's called extensions. So when you set up Google Ads, they allow you to add a few different extensions. We'll talk about a few in just a moment, but probably one of the most important ones is this site links. So this would be they're related to this company, but if the users ended up with a highly specific ad, but actually they want some more generalized information, you've got these sort of like subject area landing pages, if you like, that are more generalized than the very specific ads that, you know, typically when we write an ad, we want it to be really, really specific. But if we've got an offering that has more, you know, general product groups and or service groups, we can put those as site links into our ad setup. And that allows the user, if they do want to go in and engage our website at a different level, they can do that. If you've got Google My Business set up, which means the local, if we've got a local physical location and we verified ourselves with Google, we get to show up on Google Maps and things like that, but we also get to include our location on our Google ads, which if we're the sorts of business where, you know, a local location is important, like Noops probably is, then, you know, that's also an extra way to increase the overall performance of this particular ad, because you can click through and access the Google My Business information, which would be the local shop level information that you would see on sort of a Google Maps thing. You can also enter a telephone number, so via a mobile device, people can actually, you know, call from the ad, and, you know, there are other extensions as well. In terms of like the ad copy, so these are what we would typically, these are typically best practices that sort of need to keep an eye on. So remember, it is an ad, so highlighting the unique selling points, you know, is definitely what we want to do in the copy. Prices, promotions, these can be included as site extensions, as ad extensions. So you can have these call out extensions, so-called call out extensions that sort of sit alongside the ad, and you'll probably be familiar if you think about it when you search, you know, particularly a consumer product or something, you might see a link that says summer sale or 50% off January sales or something, and that will be an additional link that sits alongside the ads, but is not the main link. And so prices and promotions can be included in call out extensions. It might seem obvious, but if we're saying we want to be shown up for when people search certain keywords, then it makes sense, not necessarily from an ad performance, not directly from an ad performance point of view, but if we want to resonate with what the user's searching for, we want to include their keywords that they've searched. Therefore, we are showing up for them in the ad copy that we create. You know, having the correct title casing in the headlines of our ads, you know, is quite important. Capitalize all of the keywords. CTA is call to action, so having a call to action. And again, if we're advertising, you know, talking directly to our audience, you know, is kind of what we want to be doing here. And then we'll talk about you know, ad quality score and things like that at the back end. We'll talk about how Google assesses how good our ad is from its perspective. And one of the main sort of drivers for Google's interpretation of how good our ad is does the content on our ad, does it match the landing page where we're sending users to? If it does, Google's going to say that's a better ad than if the ad content doesn't match the landing page. Because if it doesn't match the landing page, Google's going to think that that's, you know, at best going to be not a good user experience, and at worst, we're duping users into clicking through to a page that's not actually connected with the ad. And as we'll see, one of the ways that Google prices clicks is in quite a large part based on how good its algorithm believes our ad is. So not all advertisers pay the same amount for the same click from the same search. One advertiser might pay significantly more than another, and it would be based on the quality, the perceived quality of the ad.
On that particular point then, Elliot, so if the perceived quality of the ad is of the highest quality, are we saying there's a good opportunity for the price per ad to be lower?
Yeah, that's exactly It's exactly
Right.
what they're saying. And it's an interesting one, because I think in my experience, a lot of obviously people who work in digital marketing know that, but in my experience, most marketers, that's news to them, even ones who are relatively digitally savvy. So I don't know if you were aware of that. Were you, Emily? Was that, or Sandra? No. We will talk more about that, Neil. I'll talk in quite detail about how that works, because it's important. Just to talk a bit more about the ad extensions then. So these are the sort of what's called site links. So the idea here is you've got a really specific ad talking about criminology degrees, but you've also got the general about us page, why Goldsmiths University, how to apply, and generic information about undergraduates. And that's what site links looks like. This is obviously the location. We've already spoken about that. And the click to call and call out extensions. And then the structured snippets, this here would be when we're creating our ad on the back end of the system, we can add some specific like, I guess, USP words. So these would be words that might describe our offering or our products. So modern, mid-century, contemporary, small space furniture. We get the opportunity to add some of these structured snippets into the format of our ads. And we've spoken about call out extensions. So these would be examples really of USPs of our particular product and service, or points that we want to highlight to the user. Okay, I'll talk now about selecting keywords, and then we'll drop into another discussion before we talk about how the marketplace works. So so we spoke last time about SEO, about how to look at, we don't, with search, because we are positioning ourselves for for our customers initiating. So this is a reactive play. This is not a proactive play. So we can't go out and reach our customers. We have to position ourselves for searches that they are running. So therefore, it's really important that we look at the search volume, and we look at the sorts of search queries, and we take a given budget typically, and we work out how best to apply that budget given those search queries and the volume in the markets that we're looking at. And then obviously, as Neil's quite rightly said, we need to know roughly the individual cost per click. As we're going to see in the last part of this, it's a marketplace, so you never know exactly what the cost per click is going to be, but you can estimate what it's going to be, or Google will give you that estimate if you put in the right information. And therefore, you can create a strategy that will take that budget, spend it at the rate that we want to spend it, and deliver us the most value that we think we can get. And then you obviously review the results and continuously optimize and adjust. So Google's got some tools, and you can make use of third-party tools that are very similar to the ones we spoke about during the SEO week. And we spoke about semantically connected keywords when we talk about SEO, and this is the same. This is how we want to link our ad groups with all of the semantically relevant phrases that users might enter in a search. Just talk a little bit about, this is as technical as we'll get here, so don't want to bamboozle anyone, but there's these kind of match types, and let's just sort of get a key understanding of how they work, because it has some implications. So exact match is, we can set a phrase and say it has to be matching that exact phrase, otherwise we're not going to show up in the results. We can have the what's called phrase match. So if we talk about woman's hats, it might be red woman's contemporary hats. That counts because it's still woman's and hats is in the same is in the same order, even though there are some words that come in between that. And then there's broad match, which means hats, hats for, women going to weddings, so hats is in front of women's, but a broad match would capture that type of search. Broad match modified, I beg your pardon. And then broad match would capture any search that has any of the keywords triggers. So, woman's shoes in this case would be captured by broad match. It wouldn't need, so it would need women's or hats anywhere in the search, it would show up. So, and I'm sure, it's self-explanatory really. So the broader you are with your search, the larger your volume is. So it's about making, finding the phrases that are sensible. Clearly, if we're selling women's hats, we wouldn't go broad match. We might go broad match modified, we'd go phrase match, and we would probably include exact match. And you can have all three of those tactics in different ad groups. And obviously you would get the exact match term would likely be, amongst the highest performing in terms of conversion rates, but the search volume would be much lower than broad match modified, for example. So the other thing that is almost invariably involved in ad campaigns is negative keywords. So if there's a particular keyword that's going to appear potentially appear in a user search phrase, and we want to not show up for those search results, we can specify negative keywords. So examples might be, if we've got a high-end service or luxury service, cheap would be a negative keyword. So if the words cheap appears anywhere in the search, I don't want to bid for that one. I don't want to waste my money for that user. And then the interesting one for me is, because if you think about it, if we go back to this slide, if you go broad match modified or broad match, or even potentially phrase match, you've got the ability, or you've got the potential rather, to show up for searches, for branded searches that people might be running for other competitors. So if you're a university and you're going for undergraduate degrees, you went phrase match, you would capture undergraduate degrees in Goldsmiths University. And if I was a competitor of Goldsmiths University, I'd be potentially showing up for those phrases. So there is the thing with AdWords, there is the ability to sort of passively compete with competitors, their branded search terms. And then you can also, obviously, I'm sure you could imagine looking at this, you could actually proactively go after it as well. And different businesses have different sort of takes on this. Some people want to go there, some people really don't want to go there, and some people are kind of, if we happen to show up in a search with a branded term, that's okay, but we're not specifically targeting our competitors. So I thought I'd throw in two questions here, and feel free to answer both, neither, or one on your opinions. But organic or ads, which result are you most likely to click on? And then what's your take on competitor terms? I'm going to pick on Sandra again.
Sure. So for the organic or ad clicks, it depends. I'll be very honest here. It depends how I feel about the company that comes up. So if I'm feeling, like generous towards them, and I'm like, oh, like they're a startup or they're a company I don't want to make pay for my click, I'll click on, I'll go for the organic one if it's reasonably close. Because sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, you're going to pay for my click. You're really going to feel this. So that's kind of my thinking behind it. And if on the first or second page, the company that I wanted didn't come up, I'll make them pay for it as well. So I'll reward, good companies, and I'll reward good SEO. And then if it's a brand, I'm like, no, you can pay for this. I'll click on the ad. Yeah.
No, that's good. It's just interesting to know. And I probably can vaguely relate to, but I more meant if you in terms of which result would you trust most, sort of more generically, really, rather than.
Right. I mean, I guess it depends again on the company, which one I kind of trust more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it depends on the product that I'm looking for as well, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a bit, it depends. And then do I know any of the brands that come up? I think that will probably influence it as well. So yeah, like I've got the like worst answer. It depends.
No, I think it's a good answer, because you're right. It does depend. It depends on what you're searching for. Depends on your perception of the brands. It's a good example of how all marketing channels and tactics play into each other.
Yeah.
I don't know, Neil or Emily, have you got any thoughts on this?
I see, Sandra, you're a lady after my own heart. I do exactly the same. There's a particular sports clothing firm, and I won't mention the names, but if I ever have to shop there, they will pay for that advert. So I try to get them to pay something to society through that way. So yeah, I think I would probably go in the more organic one. Would I trust it? I think the advert one, I think I can't say I've ever practiced this particular bit, but I think I would probably trust it more, the organic one, because the ad can almost seem contrived, that they could have potentially put as many words in there as possible to get you to click on, and then you click on it and it's not really what you wanted. Whereas the organic one, they would tend to just do what is actually the words that are on their website. So I think the organic one, if at a push, if I had to make a decision.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, it's definitely the case that most people would tend to trust the organic result a little bit more, because most people know, most people know that one is a form of advertising and the other isn't. Yeah. And we're sort of hardwired to sort of go down the organic route. So, I would agree. I don't know what you think, Emily.
I do agree in the sense that if I'm putting in a search item, I often find, you get the top two, which are ads. Sometimes because I'm just clicking too fast, I accidentally click on them, but then obviously I'm making them pay, so that feels quite nice. But I think I tend to go for the organic ones as well, because often with ads, they're paying to be up there, and I always find the match is never quite right. And then when you go a few down on the organic ones, it tends to, be closer to what I'm after.
Yeah. I think again, so what you're saying is reflective of how most people would work. The interesting thing, though, and I'm not here to sort of obviously I'm genuinely not here to sell AdWords, even though I'm a digital marketing person. But however, the truth is that there's two things to say. First of all, as an advertiser, you're not actually unless someone clicks, then you're not paying. But the second thing is the opportunity for AdWords to work is if you really are answering the question in a good way, and then people having potentially searched around organically and not quite got what they want, and you deliver a result, again, the likelihood that you will convert, is relatively high. But it's that thing that we're all saying, or if all things being equal, most human beings would trust the organic result more. So you've kind of got to bear that in mind when we're working with Google, when we're working with AdWords, search advertising. And then the other thing that Sandra mentioned is this thing about, the branded keywords. So some companies will pay to show up number one for their own brand. And some companies don't want to, because they're like, why do I need to do that? Because I'll probably be number one of the organic results anyway. And again, I find that a really interesting one, because and I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer here, but if you're a brand and you know that you're going to be, if someone wants to find you, they can find you organically, then why would you pay to be the number one brand? The counter argument to that, and I think it's a pretty strong one actually, is that why would you not pay to own the real estate for your own brand and have two results instead of one? And then what also goes in the favor is, because as we'll see in a moment with how Google charges this stuff, because you're the brand and you're advertising for your own brand, because you're so relevant, you're automatically, even if you're quite rubbish at optimizing ads, you're going to get high quality score because you're so relevant. So the cost is going to be very low, certainly very low compared to any non-branded search terms you're going for. So it's an interesting one, and there seem to be two camps. But for me, there is a branding play to owning your own branded terms.
Can it not potentially lower mistrust, judging by the conversations that we've just had, where we've all kind of said we prefer the organic ones, and then if you're trying to then push your brand up there to have an ad and show that you've paid for it, can that then?
Look, it is such a good question, and I'm not going to sort of sit here and pretend I know the answer. I just think you guys will. In my opinion, it probably depends mostly on how your brand is reflected in the minds of that particular searcher. So Neil referred to a certain brands that I'm guessing I can guess who they are, but he might not reflect so well. If you've got a strong brand, then it's probably going to be a positive thing. I don't know. What do you think, Emily?
I think if you've matched the terms, so say Canoops, I'm not sure about Google, but definitely on Amazon. So I'm just going to go off the same basis that it applies to Google, but we are pretty much number 1 or number 2 on Amazon. And I think this is organic. I'm not sure for luxury hot chocolate flakes or like luxury hot chocolate. So if I put that into Google and Canoops was pretty near the top, I probably wouldn't pay for it, but that's just me. I don't know. It's a tough one. Because you can again see both arguments.
Yeah. If you're don't get me wrong. If you've got so luxury hot chocolate is your non-branded term, isn't it? That you want to go for.
It's something along those lines. It definitely is on Amazon.
Yeah, there will be a few of them, but that's one. So don't get me wrong. If you were number 1 for that particular term, then that's a decent argument for saying, we own that keyword, the organic position. It was really the branded term. Because if someone just types in Canoops, that the search volume is going to be lower than the other terms. So
because one of our keywords is also a branded term, which is canoopology, and I think part of that was done deliberately because they have a vision to see it as a noun and like the go-to reference. So with us, it probably is a little bit more complicated, but it's interesting because it's really making me think through like why they made their key term a branded thing, and wanting to make it a noun.
Yeah, I mean, look, if that's a tactic, and you got press releases and things in articles referencing that noun, then I imagine that supporting that with a small, because the thing is that the clicks, they wouldn't be vast in number, and the cost per click would be so low because there wouldn't really be any competition.
Yeah.
Until you got competitors wanting to go after your business and things like that. But even then, they would be paying way more than you because you're the branded term. So
it's interesting. It's really interesting, actually. It's making me think.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Any more questions or comments before I go into the last bit of content?
I just think, like, for me, maybe I'm just like thinking this like too much from like a marketing point of view, but I think it'd be weird if I'm a brand and I don't want to bid on my own brand, because I feel like that's just people being cheap and like feeling like, oh, we don't need to like bid on our own brand. And then if I just see competitors going like see the competitors bidding on it, I'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I should go with one of the competitors because they're willing to pay for it. But it might just be me being a bit cynical. I don't know. Might just be me.
Yeah, I have to, like, if someone forced me into a position, I think I'm with you, Sandra, in truth. I do. Okay, let me share, and we'll talk now about the marketplace and how it works. So Google is an auction system, and there's something called ad rank, and there's something called quality score. So these are the two things that I want you to sort of keep in mind. So the way it works is like this. So when a user performs a search, in the split second that it goes to the Google servers, Google runs a real-time auction for all of the advertisers. It doesn't matter if it's 5 advertisers, 10 advertisers, or 500 advertisers who are bidding for, you know, given the targeting strategy that we just referred to, bidding for a given phrase that the users just searched for. And it will run that auction based on their bidding strategy in terms of how, broadly speaking, how high they've said, what the maximum amount they said they would pay for a given click. And then it also looks at the quality score from the context of that particular search. It's important to understand that your quality score will be different for different searches, and it will combine those two things to do well, quite a few things. But the main output is it's going to pick the one that has the best combination of bid and quality will appear as the first place ad. The one that's the second best will appear as the second place ad, and the one that's the third best will play as the third place ad, and all the others won't be shown at all, basically. And not only that, it's also going to determine if the user clicks on any one of those 3 ads, it's going to determine what the price will be to that particular advertiser. And what's important to understand here is I suppose one of the good things about Google, it's not just going to charge whatever the maximum that advertiser said they would bid. No, it will charge the lowest possible amount given the relative competition. So I used to do this where I actually put the formula, but and I can send it to anyone so there is an actual formula, an actual algorithm, and it's based on relative competition, but it will always be the lowest price possible given the relative competition. And as I mentioned at the start, and we'll sort of talk about this next, it's not the case that all those advertisers are going to pay the same price. They'll each get their own individual price, and one might be higher, one might be much higher than the others. So ads with a high ad rank show, and the ads with not high enough ad rank just won't show at all. So how does Google determine the quality score? So there's a bunch of things, but these are the main ones. So first of all, how relevant is the actual copy text that we've put in our actual ad to the search? So it's just the ad at this stage. How relevant is the ad to the search? How relevant are the keywords? So just broadly speaking, this is saying, are the keywords included in the copy? If they are, then it's relevant. Then the expected click-through rate. So this is once an ad has been up and running, once an account and a campaign and an ad group have been up and running for some period of time, Google's going to say, what is the click-through rate? So as a percentage of how many times that ad has been shown, what percentage of sessions are resulting in a click? And that might be 5%, it might be 1%, it might be 10%. But this is Google saying, how are the real life humans who are running the searches responding to the ads from this particular account and campaign and ad group relative to how they're responding to the competitors? So if our click rate is 5% and competitor A is 1%, we will get a higher quality score for the expected click-through rate component. And if competitor B is 10%, they've got a higher score than us. So in that scenario, we're in the middle in terms of expected click-through rate. Then Google is going to evaluate keyword relevancy, ad relevance. It then also looks at the actual landing page. So it's going to follow our URL to the landing page using its AI and its algorithm, similar to the way in which they evaluate a page from an SEO perspective. They'll evaluate that specific landing page and then say, how connected is it with the ad copy and the original search, and it's going to give the landing page a score. And then historical performance of an account. So if we've had an ad account that's running and we've managed to improve the quality score and maintain a quality score, we also get rewarded for running, a high quality account over time. And so all of those things will provide a quality score, and then Google will also look at our maximum bid, and it combines those two to give an overall score, and that's what it will base the auction on. And it's also what it will base the eventual cost per click on. So this is the potential effect. So you get disproportionately penalized in a sense in terms of how much it costs you for having a low quality score. So in the end, when Google's running this quality score, it's between 1 and 10, 1 being a low quality, 1 being low quality, and 10 being the highest quality. And if you're only a 1, then you would pay 4 times, 400% more than the nominal cost per click. So if we said a regular click is £1, if we are as poor, if we've got the lowest possible quality score, then we would be paying £4 per click. And then right on the other side of the scale, if you're the highest quality possible, if you get a 10, you're paying 50% of the click, so you'll pay 50p. So the difference between the top and the bottom, you're talking about 8 times, 800%. It's a really big difference. And just to sort of spell this out, what it means. So if you're an advertiser that's spending £1 million a year on advertising, and a normalized cost per click, for argument's sake, is £1. If you imagine that if you've got ad campaigns really well set up over the long period of time, this tactic should be a profit driver for your business. Google advertising, Google search advertising in particular, over the medium term, should be a profit generator for the business. So if you assume that your conversion rate, so you get a number of clicks, but you convert, meaning you generate sales of 1%, and the average sale price is £400. Let's assume that those numbers are static. Obviously, they will adjust over time, but let's assume they're static. If you were the lowest quality advertiser possible for your £1 million of ad budget, you're paying £4 per click, so therefore you get only 250,000 clicks, and actually you're at break even in terms of revenue. Whatever you put in, you're going to get £1 million out if these numbers, were equal. But conversely, if you're advertising at the highest quality possible, you're at 50% of the nominal cost per click, so it's 50p, and therefore you get 2 million clicks, and your sales of suddenly of 8 million, which hopefully would be profitable for you. So you can see the importance of the quality score. And that is the end for today. So are there any thoughts or any general questions on any aspect?
Sorry, after you.
No, I just think it's made me completely rethink my opinion on ads, because I think there's so much stuff that can potentially contradict each other, and it's weighing it up and balancing it, because I always just thought they were like a really great idea, and part of me still thinks that, but part of me then also questions it as well when you're looking at it from a customer perception point of view. And so once again, thank you for making me think and challenge my thought on the subject.
Yeah. So next week we're going to talk about social advertising, social media advertising, and we'll incorporate, YouTube, which is actually a form of Google Ads, although it's not obviously search marketing.
Yeah.
And actually, the 2 weeks really should go together, because really the way that you run digital advertising is you look at all of these channels and you build it up together. But yeah, look, I'm glad. It's nice to hear that it's been thought-provoking.
Yeah. Are there particular industries that you think work well with using AdWords?
Yeah, look, if I'm honest, I would say there is a play for almost any industry. I mean, search marketing, it's increased in importance, and it's almost like you can turn the question around. Is there any industry where there isn't a market for it?
Yeah, I suppose I should have. I'm just trying to see whether the industry that we're in, for instance, it's relatively niche. So it's not about having lots of traffic to our website and lots of traffic into us as a business. It's about getting the right traffic. If we had 3 people look at our website or Google us on a particular day, but those 3 were the decision makers, then that would mean the world to us. Because of our industry, and it's relatively small, it's not consumer based. I'm scratching my head, and it's given me a lot of food for thought about whether we do some AdWords and whether we could make that pay for us. Yeah,
I mean, it does to the intent, right? Because if you've got the right searches and the right people looking for it, yeah, and because it's going to be people who kind of are looking for your particular product, and if they're very niche, you want to be able to be found, even if they don't particularly know about your organization already, and then paying for their clicks when they're looking for you or your solutions. I think it's like really important to be there, but that's just.
No, it's a very valid point, because we do class ourselves internally as one of the best kept secrets in our marketplace, because we are relatively not necessarily new, but relatively small in comparison to certain people. So that's a very, very good point, and I think that's where we could potentially flex our muscles a little bit more and actually shout out and do some proper marketing around what we actually do and start shouting about what we do, rather than being, shall we say, a more passive approach. That's a very good point. Very good point. Okay, cool.
It is a really good point. And actually, to Neil, it is a good question as well. Maybe let me give you a slightly better answer than the one I gave at the start. I would say it's like this, because you're obviously a relatively niche, B2B supplier. So there's not, the volume is not going to be particularly massive. But I think Sandra's just said it much better than I have. The volume's not massive, but actually what is there potentially is pretty valuable. And so it's like this. So Mint Swiss work with a lot of universities, and they literally spend £1 million plus a year on advertising, because they're in a very, very competitive space, and they have to compete, and all of them, they make money from that advertising because it converts. Now that's because there's tens of or hundreds of thousands of students looking for universities every year. It's a huge number of. In your case, obviously, it's a much smaller segment of people potentially looking for your services. But I am inclined to agree with Sandra that there's still potentially value there. Clearly, you wouldn't have to spend very much because you're talking about very small volumes of search.
Yeah.
But cool. It's, someone said it a couple of weeks ago. I think it's like there's so much you can do, and like the art of business is working out where to put your chips. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. So
yeah. Okay, no, that's great. No, it's good. A lot of food for thought tonight.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you. If there are any more questions, it's been a delight as always. And so next week we can talk about social media advertising, and hopefully we'll connect with today's session a little bit, and then we'll sort of see how, from an advertising perspective, it's worth looking at these things together rather than separate tactics.
Great stuff.
All right. Have a lovely week.
You too.
Have a good week. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.